Gregory.
Caroline, yeah.
So I'm Caroline Gregory, I'm the chair at Hyde Community Action, and Rehana is one of the chief officers. So what we're going to do is I'll just give you a bit of a background to how it came about. Rehana will talk more about what we do, and I'll talk a bit about our future ambition. And it's interesting what you talked about population, because this came about in 2007. This was formed as a result of between 2004 and 2007. There was a healthy living centre, an Asian healthy living centre that was established under the auspices of the Health Authority, and that used big lottery funding for the 3 years. As the money was running out, it became apparent that actually people really wanted this to continue. We're based on Great Northern Street in what was an old GP surgery down near Asda. And the building was being very well used, the project was very successful, and so it was decided to go ahead and make it into a community-owned enterprise rather than being run by the local authority and the health authority. And I was involved as a local resident, I live on Great Northern Street, in that process of setting it up. And we'll be celebrating 10 years in November. We're going to have a celebration on the 25th of November for the 10-year anniversary of Hyde Community Action. In that 10 years, what is very different about this place, which I actually have an allotment on Mill Lane in Horton Green, which I can walk to, but I live here, and the population here is very different from Horton Green. There's a large Bangladeshi population here. And the original Healthy Living Centre took account of that. When we moved across into a more community-based organisation, what we wanted to do was actually engage with the whole community. So that restriction on it being an Asian Healthy Living Centre changed. However, most of our work still is with the Asian community, particularly with Asian women. So with Bangladeshi women here and Pakistani women in Ashton. And that's as a result of many factors, including the one that the Hyde Bangladeshi Welfare Association, which is based on Chapel Street, does a lot of work with Bangladeshi men and not so much with women. So we picked up a lot of the work with women. The model that we've had, which is this ABCD model, the asset-based community development model, is very much it's very local. And so what we've done through the years is work with volunteers who've then become trained, who've then got jobs, and we employ local people, we work with local volunteers. We do everything on a fairly small scale locally until recently. And what has changed is the clinical commissioning group, for instance, they want us to work across Tameside with all the communities in Tameside, from all the BME communities on the Be Well service. We've managed to get some lottery funding last year for 3 years, so we've got another 2 years of that, which provides a range of services which Rehana will tell you about. So if you tell us about what we do now, and then I'll go back to what we're looking to do in the future.
Okay, so I'm Rehana. Hi. I've also been born and brought up in Hyde, so I'm a very local person, local resident. So the place I work is just round the road from where I work, so it's very close to my heart. So I came to the organisation. 10-year celebration is 9 years ago, so really very much part of the furniture there now, but really have grown from working as a frontline development worker, worked part-time 9 years ago, to now actually going to the top to being a chief officer, managing the organisation, how we actually deliver our work. So we're very passionate about how we engage with our community. That's been the number one factor. Quite a lot of our work we have that developed over the years have always been community-led. By that we mean we're not funder-led, so we don't chase funding because of the sake of money and sourcing it in. I mean, it is a factor, it's a big factor for a local charity like us, where funding is a constant restraint and a stress for us to maintain our staffing, to maintain our activities and services. So we're now, the whole the health and social care agenda is around being focused around social prescribing. And one of the things for us is like, that's fantastic. There are already community groups on the ground who are offering these services that can be tapped into. We're also looking at how to actually sustain those services, because a lot of these groups struggle. We have a lot of groups that don't go for funding because it's a difficult process, but yet that service is needed by clinicians, by other services that have to navigate, signposts, refer on to these social prescribing activities, sessions as well. So that's one of the other factors. Now, Caroline mentioned a couple of our funding streams that we've secured. We have been funded by Penine Care, part of Public Health, to deliver on our health and wellbeing project. which really is around engagement in the local community, raising awareness of key health issues, making it locally accessible, and also getting services accessible for these individuals. So we face quite a lot of barriers. So as you can imagine, with any ethnic minority community, any minority communities that you face, there are multiple barriers. But we're located in Hyde, in Tameside, Hyde as well, and Hyde's population within the BME communities is both Bangladeshi and Pakistani. And they're presented as the most deprived, with several inequalities in health inequalities, employment, and low education. There's multiple factors that we're dealing with here. Now, over the course of years, we've talked to the community, we've spoken to the residents, and we've identified gaps in some services. We've spoke to statutory providers and worked with them in developing our current projects. The Pennine Care Project now, as it is supporting the Be Well service. So we have a BME liaison worker who works across Tameside with all BME communities, trying to go in, engage, educate, raise awareness, and also help them access the services that they feel that there isn't any or not right for them, but actually guide them through those services, because there's constant changes going on everywhere. We also have the big lottery project that we've secured last year, and that was developing our Women Supporting Women programme, and that looks heavily on domestic violence and domestic abuse, mental health within BME communities, and our learning, training and development programme and employability. So we've really encompassed all these factors that were preventing these communities from progressing and moving on and actually putting it under one umbrella. However, we yet again, because of the huge demand we're kind of facing, we're across Tameside now, where we were locally based before. We have 7 staff members. Out of 7, 3 of them are frontline workers. So these 3 frontline workers are out and about doing our Pennine contract, our big lottery contract around domestic abuse, mental health, and doing everything really. So it's becoming to a point where the demand is at such a high that it's becoming a capacity issue for us now. We work in partnership as much as we can with the providers, but the gap we constantly get told is engagement within BME communities, and it takes a long time to build those relationships. I think somebody mentioned again about relationship and building trust as well, and we've had 10 years of this in Hyde, and we've embarked now into Tameside to build those links back up again. And it takes a long process, but funding is restricted to 2 years to 3 years, and it's not a long-term investment. So, and I've been in the community development setting for the 9 years. Previously, I've been finance and very boring behind desk to now frontline. And in that 9 years, I've seen it go in a circle. I've been told by loads of people saying, "Oh, we did this, 10 years ago." And I said, "Oh no, it's going to change." But actually, I've seen it go round in a circle now twice. I'm thinking, what's going on? We're just constantly going around in a circle. And I said, something needs to change. And I think the way some services are now going into investment into local communities is fantastic. It's happened before, and it's been taken out, and people know that. So the trust is more difficult to kind of gain, and especially with fantastic project like Julie mentioned about the services. I think when Dr. Hanan told me about it, why did the funding get stopped? Because it's a massive area, over 75s, and the support, and there's lack of it. So I think it's a real concern to the powers that be that provide the funding, is making funding accessible, so then communities like ourselves, charities like, can actually easily access these funding, but actually giving a time scale to build those co-production we talk about, these partnership working with us, so we can work on community cohesion, work as partners across the boroughs, and actually strengthen the infrastructure we have to support the residents we serve together. Because quite a lot of time what we find is different charities fighting for different pots of money and actually direct competition, and it's awful to see. But you're fighting to keep your centre open, your staffing structure open, so something needs to give. But we've done some fantastic work anyway. On another note, I mean, we work with the PPG and Horton Valley Medical Centre on online access. So we've actually developed a package of an ESOL programme and tailored it to online access, which had fantastic outcomes, which I can share the evaluation report with yourselves. I'll pass it on to Dr. Hannah and you can circulate that. But what we found was that when it was bespoke and it was targeted and it was kind of specific to it, so the learning was greater. The results and outcomes were greater, so people were starting to actually absorb the information. Sometimes you have a lot of influx of information coming at the same time, doesn't always work. I have struggled, I have problems with retaining information, I think. I forget as soon as I say anything. But that really, really worked. And what we did it as a pilot at a point where I think the practice itself was struggling to engage the community and taking up online access. And we had a gap in terms of we didn't have funding for English classes, and that was a massive demand. So we said, hang on a second, we've got the package, we've got some volunteers, we could come together, combine, and actually put something on, see how it goes. Pilot went fantastic, we won an award for it, you won an award, and then we struggled to get funding to recreate that up until just recently. From CCG kind of then offered us kind of a couple of grand to redo the project, but again it was a short-term project that we can only run one cohort and then we're back to square one. And our aspiration for that project was if we could only share that model across Tameside, across the GP practices, get everybody accessing online so they can self-help, manage their own medicine. They can, because a lot of it within BME communities, a lot of the older generation, the younger generation, tend to take care of all the medical needs and tend to attend appointments and help their parents, extended family access that. Quite a lot of the time they don't know what's happening with their elderly mum, mother-in-law, anything. So it becomes a battle when they go into the GP practice about actually have they had this treatment, have they had that treatment. And so there's a lot of communication barriers that they face as well, and access barriers as well. But this model really focused on educating around online access, the medication passport, and how to get into other services. It encompassed all these services we're talking about, and we actually brought different guest speakers in to have a conversation with these women in English, so they can practice their English language skills, their IT skills in a sense, so they can access online skills, but also making them aware of what's around them out in the community, what they can access. And it was really fantastic. So that's one of the projects we did. We've done other projects with oral health, Home Start as well, with engagement under 2 years childcare. We've done pilot projects around health, wealth and well-being, which is around looking at wider social determinants of health. So where we've mentioned people's health could be really low, but it could be numerous factors. It could be debt, it could be housing, it could be family issues, it could be anything. It's quite broad. And we went in, and that was a fantastic project that we worked with Penang Care with Tameside Council. Again, there's no funding to continue that, and it was a really fantastic because you're on the doorstep to people and you're actually talking to people face to face and you're bringing these services to them. So we just work with eliminating barriers time and time again, but then funding gets pulled and then you get pushed back and then the community gets dispersed and then trust gets lost. So back in that constant revolving door, I guess, in a sense as well. But at this moment in time, we are working across Tameside. We have a learning programme which concentrates on basic learning. We have a accredited learning where we work with partners to bring in and make it accessible for people to gain higher qualification in these communities. We work with the National Career Service on the employability part of it, so we're actually stretching our capacity and resources. We're working with Tameside College, we're working with Tameside Running Centre, we're working with the Tameside Adult Learning, we're working with Manchester Adult Education as well, on the Talk English Cafe. We've worked with quite a lot of partners, but again, that's all limited because of a capacity issue in a sense. And we'd love to share all this information, we'd love to share the good practices that we've learned to see whether or not other communities could benefit from that. With our domestic abuse and our mental health programme was an initial challenge for us because it was very, very new 2 years back. But we identified that through the whole course of Hyde Community Action that mental health was a massive taboo, so was domestic abuse in the communities. And very little was being done. A lot of services we spoke to found it very difficult to engage in these communities to address these issues, to have an open dialogue. The police were saying there was underrepresentation of incidents being reported. So we thought, well, let's pilot something, look for some funding, and that was a mission in itself. We ended up getting 2 different funders, trying to juggle 2 funders so that somebody will fund staff, somebody will fund project costs, and then 2 different monitoring systems. It was mad. But anyway, we got through it. And I always say it's horrible to say it was a great project because the demand for that service of the project was quite high. And it's like, for us, it was like, what did these people do before? It was quite concerning. So it was really centred around a peer mentor approach where we recruited bilingual volunteers from the local community, so across Thames, Ashton and Hyde, where the two big predominant B&E communities reside. And then we trained them up through mental health, domestic abuse training, so they were well equipped to go out into the community as well. And then we visited a lot of agencies to raise awareness of our project, and they started to signpost people to us, so refer people into our services, where we would then go and do initial assessment and then support those individuals. So it's very low-level preventative stuff that we offer. If it's quite higher, then we kind of obviously it's a GP or a more clinical service that they need to be referred to. But it's more having that safe environment for those individuals to speak to somebody in their own language. They can actually openly talk about their feelings, whereas quite a lot of the restriction, even if they are going into statutory services to talk to GPs with an interpreter, it's not the same. Because it doesn't get
I'm
really.
afraid I'm going to have to interrupt you now, Rehana. You're doing some you're clearly doing some absolutely fantastic work.
Yeah, and I think
there.
the bottom line is, I mean, we're there in the community, and we have been around for 10 years now, and we do a lot of activities. I've got some activity guides that we have. If you'd like to be added onto our distribution list that we circulate every quarter, feel free to let us know. I've got some information about the peer mentor program as well, the referral form and the agency brief around that. We don't openly advertise the peer mentor program itself in the community because it's quite sensitive. It's quite anonymously done. You probably find black cards given by GP practices to some, you probably come across black cards, and it's just a little logo with a phone number. And that phone number goes directly to one of our bilingual workers, who then picks up that phone and they have that conversation with them. So it's very confidential, and we have safeguarding policies in place to safeguard anybody who comes into our services. So I'll let you.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we don't have any time for questions at the moment, but maybe in the discussion section at the end. But thank you very much, ladies. That's great.